Hello everyone, welcome back to what should be a very interesting episode of the Play On podcast, the hurling edition. I have Luke here with me. Luke, what did you make of this weekend's hurling?
I thought this was really the week when hurling took off this year. I thought it was four fantastic matches, really huge entertainment, huge talking points, and we're with the first game that we're going to get into. I kind of epitomised the talking points, yeah. So looking forward to talking about it, because there is so much we can tease out here.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. The championship certainly exploded into life last weekend. That first game that we're going to talk about was Tipperary against Clare. Now, last weekend, yourself and I, we did a preview of this match. I selected Clare to win this game and you selected Tip. Now, just on half-time, when Tony Kelly scored that goal to put Clare in front right on half-time, I felt pretty good about my prediction of who was going to win this game. And then in the second half, one key moment, Aidan McCarthy's tackle on Jake Morris. I don't know how on earth James Owens saw that as a penalty. He was probably the only person in the entire stadium who was thinking in that way. I don't even think Jake Morris was calling for it. None of the Tipperary players were calling for it. That was a huge moment that turned against Clare. As well as that, Cathal Barrett potentially should have been sent off. He was on a yellow card. He seemed to pull pretty heavily across Tony Kelly and then, seemed to get away with it when all the Clare players were screaming for the red card. And then on top of that, Aaron Shanahan, right at the end of the game, seemed to be dragged down. And when you look at the replay, Barry Heffernan isn't even looking at the ball. He's just holding Aaron Shanahan, and the referee doesn't give it. Three huge moments that went against Clare, and Tipperary end up winning the game. Now, you could argue that Tipperary were the better team anyway, but all three of them moments swung the game hugely, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing you have to start is with the penalty and the sin bin decision. And it was 31 meters from the goal. It was on the sideline. And the new rule now, it states that when it's a goal scoring chance is being denied, then it's to be given. But I don't see any scenario when a fella out in the sideline with about four players in between himself and the goal where that can be possibly considered a goal decision. The thing was, I saw somebody put up on Twitter anyway last night that Jake Morris was actually closer to the Ennis Road than he was to the Clare goal. So it just sums it up. It was a mad decision and I think everybody was in disbelief when it was happened. And look, I know Tip probably were the better team on the day, but having said that 10-minute period where McCarthy was in the sin bin, Tip won that by 2 goals and 4 points to 2 points. So look, and in that period, there was the Jason Ford goal and the Eibhear Quilligan mistake and you can argue that Clare were just so rocked by it, the sideline was so rocked by it, that this was just such a huge moment. And yet, you talked about as well, I thought Cathal Barrett was very, very fortunate not to be sent off. The Shanahan one was two fellas tugging out of each other, but an awful lot of time those are given too. So I think Lohan had plenty of right to be very aggrieved, which he was, and definitely was in the interview afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Lohan looked disgusted in the interview after. He looked like he was trying to keep his cool, which I completely relate to. I found myself getting annoyed looking at the match, and I'm not even from Clare. It was just, the point I was making initially was Tipperary do have the better hurlers to Clare, but I was thinking that Clare are coming into this game with such momentum, and for Clare to beat Tipperary, they have to keep that momentum high, and they were keeping it going. But for something like that to happen, which is checking the momentum so much, is it's just massive for Clare. You just get the whole momentum gets checked, the whole feeling around the team. You feel like everything's against you. And they started the game so well. Ian Galvin started on fire. He hit 1-2 very quickly. His goal was beautiful to start off the game with. That was in the 5th minute. He just, took full advantage of a Paddy Maher slip. And then he just slipped it into the back of the net past Barry Hogan. Very delicate finish, but a really, really good score. And yeah, Clare looked like they were carrying the momentum, and then a brilliant, brilliant flick up to Tony Kelly for him to bang in Clare's second goal right on the stroke of half time. And I thought at half time that Clare were going to go on and win it, because I thought they've all the momentum and, the fairy tale will continue. But the referee had other ideas.
Yeah, look, I thought Lohan got spot on the first half. He looked at the tactics kind of, and Tony Kelly went in full forward. Carl Barrett was picking up him. Carl Barrett did a good job, to be fair, but it was nearly more so the other fellas around him. Ian Galvin ended up being picked up by Paddy Maher, which ended up being a complete mismatch, but speed wise in there. And that's why Ian Galvin, like you said, he won 2 after 10 minutes in there and finished up in 1-3, but he caused absolute havoc in there. And there was these fellas inside, the likes of David Reedy, Ryan Taylor, kind of the unheralded kind of Clare forwards, that like the nippy kind of fellas that were causing all sorts of bother for kind of a slow Tipperary defence. And I thought Lohan got that absolutely spot on. And they deserved their leads in the first half. And barring like a period when they conceded 1-5-0, they would have been well ahead of half time. So as well. So yeah, I thought it was an excellent first half. It was pretty much it was as good a first half as we've seen in the championship so far. And yeah, and then after that, it was a bit, despite the ridiculous decision and going into 14, Clare kind of they dealt with it poorly, I thought, as well. They reverted to kind of putting Aaron Shanahan on the edge of the square, and it was just hitting long ball on top of him like constantly, and the whole game plan kind of went to that a little bit as well. And look, they're well able for kind of that style of hurling. Barry Heffernan kind of cleared a lot of ball in there as well. And you big guys like Ronan Maher, Paddy Maher in there as well. So it kind of suited Tip a bit more. And I thought that Clare maybe could have stuck with the playing kind of shorter ball through the lines, kind of, which would have suited their style of player more. And maybe, yeah, if they stay with that, they kind of might have had a better chance of staying in the game, I think.
Yeah, definitely. They really, Clare really seemed to abandon what had been doing them so well in the first half. Their short passing, had given Tipperary plenty of problems in the first half, and then they just completely moved away from it for the second half. I think you're right with, Barry Heffernan on Aaron Shanahan. They got the matchups right there. Heffernan was, perfect match for Shanahan. And yeah, Tipperary's big men in the second half stood up, albeit, it was a lucky goal, but Seamus Callanan's goal, Bubbles O'Dwyer, he popped up with some key points. Jake Morris played pretty well. They stood up when they needed to stand up. You do have to give credit to Tipperary. Like, even though the referee, did make the obvious mistakes, Tipperary, their class shone through. And there's one moment that just, epitomized the quality that they have in their ranks was Jason Ford's sideline. He managed to slot it over the bar from so far out on the sideline, but it was pulled back because John O'Dwyer had thrown away, I think it was Conor Cleary's hurl. So Jason Ford was made to retake the sideline, and he just banged it over the bar, did the exact same thing that he'd done the first time. And it just shows how effortless this guy's ability is.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of adding on to that, I thought Liam Sheedy had a really, really strong game as well. I thought he got an awful lot of stuff right. I think Carl Barrett did as good a job as anyone could do, and Tony Kelly, I thought like he lived very dangerously at times, but at the same time, I thought this was the quietest I've seen Tony Kelly in a long, long time, and I thought Carl Barrett was absolutely excellent, and he cannot be blamed for that goal where Kelly scored. But other than that, Kelly only hit the 1 point from play, and he was kind of largely kept quiet. So I thought that was a good matchup as well. I thought the decision to move Michael Breen and Paddy Fitzpatrick was huge as well. Breen scored 1-1, and absolutely he dominated on that wing, kind of exposed Fitzpatrick's kind of lack of pace as well a bit as too. So yeah, there was a few things like that they got right. That move, particularly moving Breen onto Fitzpatrick and Dan McCormick back to midfield, but like really kind of helped Tip kind of wrestle control of that middle kind of sector. And yeah, Dan McCormick was absolutely excellent in there as well, probably the man of the match. So yeah, I thought Sheedy did really, really well. And there was another kind of moment in that at the water break that the camera zoomed in on him when you could see his different style of management. When he went over and put the arm around the shoulder to John O'Dwyer to try and get him get him more into the game. And then he went over to Callanan, more aggressive, kind of shouting in his face to try and get him going. So it just showed how good a kind of a man manager he is. And I thought that was a really interesting insight into how he approaches kind of motivating each player.
Yeah, definitely. Like he's a fantastic man manager, and to win All-Irelands with Tipperary in 2 different spells as manager, just shows the quality that he has. And you like Tipperary, they were very solid. Michael Breen, obviously his move onto Fitzpatrick, you're right. Fitzpatrick, believe it or not, only making his senior debut. there in the match at the weekend, and he was a minor for Clare in 2008. So it shows, to never give up on playing for your county, because 13 years after he played minor, he played senior. Like, that's a crazy stat that was brought up. And yeah, like Michael Breen's goal in particular just showed me this guy, the level of skill that Michael Breen has is underrated. I feel like he's looked on as just an athlete, or just a real pacey, powerful hurler, but he has unbelievable skill as well. Like, the way he managed to dribble that sliotar, was almost hockey style, and just slapping it into the net off the ground, fantastic skill. And for me, it's a no-brainer that he starts with Tipperary as well as Dan McCormack, because the amount of dirty ball that Dan McCormack won there on the weekend, he really set Tipperary on their way. He's, definitely Tipperary's unsung hero. And yeah, I don't think they would have won the game at the weekend without him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's nearly an argument that Dan McCormack is the most important player for Tip at the moment. Like, you look kind of a lot of the forward line, you could say 5 of those lads are they're kind of flashy scoring forwards, but there's there might be questions about kind of their defensive kind of output and their ability to kind of close down the backs coming out. And Dan McCormack is absolutely essential for them to provide kind of work rate. And then as well, bit of ball winning as well around kind of a half forward midfield line. Yeah, he's absolutely crucial. And and he even managed to chip in with the 2 scores the weekend in an area of his game kind of that some people kind of have been questioning. So yeah, I thought he was absolutely incredible at the weekend. And I thought he was definitely the man of the match anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think another good shout for performance of this game, like a man of the match contender from Clare's side, was Cathal Malone. This guy he never stopped going. He never stopped trying. He worked his socks off all game. He hit some fantastic points. So, his point near the end, which was a bit of a consolation, was a point from distance. That was the last score of the game. Just an outrageous score from the middle of the field. He was outstanding all game, and he kind of played around the middle. He kind of moved to the wing as well. But he's an outstanding hurler, and yeah, I think his efforts shouldn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even despite the result, I think there was a lot of kind of really strong performances from Clare as well. Like the 2 cornerbacks, Paul Flanagan and Rory Hayes, I thought looked really, really good. Conor Cleary did a great job on Callan. Like, if you look kind of for the Callan goal, that was textbook defending from Cleary. He was so tight on him that it forced Callan to miss-hit the shot, and normally that gets saved by the keeper. The keeper just comes out and catches that, and then it's excellent defending. So I thought Cleary was really kind of unlucky with that as well. And other than that, he kind of completely shut down Callan as well. So look, I think there's so many positives for Clare going forward, and kind of they'll have the motivation now from this. They'll build a bit of siege mentality that's kind of us versus them, and I think that no team's going to want to face them in the qualifiers. So I think they're the team right now that everybody would be looking to avoid.
Yeah, definitely. And I think an interesting candidate now to start for Clare, because he looked really good when he came off the bench, was Mark Rogers. He had a flash goal chance himself, which was well saved by Barry Hogan. And then I don't know how Aidan McCarthy managed to miss the rebound. I think he was kind of shoved in the back a little bit, or he was running too fast. But then Mark Rogers as well nearly put Tony Kelly through for a goal. It was a brilliant flick by Paddy Maher, which denied him the chance. He looked lively, he looked sharp, and yeah, especially considering Shane O'Donnell didn't play at the weekend, it's good for them to have an option, with the pace that Rogers has.
Yep, absolutely. He did add a lot of urgency up to that forward line. But again, like, you look at kind of the other forwards as well, like Ryan Taylor, very, very good game as well. And like Ian Galvin, obviously, as well, no harm to himself too. So there's plenty of options up there. And they kind of seem strong in every kind of aspect of the pitch. And I think they are in a pretty good place. So it'll just be interesting to see kind of who they're drawn against. But I'd probably consider them to be the strongest team in the qualifiers right now.
Yeah, I think they look in very, very good shape. And, I do think I wouldn't write off either of these teams now to have a serious crack at the All-Ireland. We'll get on to the later results. But, the shocks that happened this weekend, speak for themselves. And, Aidan McCarthy tackle leading to the penalty, and then Aaron Shanahan's penalty not being given by, James Owens. That's a 6-point turnaround, and Tipperary won the game by 4 points. So that shows just how close it was, and it shows, the impact that the referees' decisions had on the game. and 7,000 fans in the ground, and you could hear the boos at full time. I haven't heard that for a long, long time. Booing of that level at the end of a match. For a referee's performance.
Yeah, look, it was. Yeah, absolutely. Like it overshadowed, I suppose, what was like a really, really good game, and it was the game was really simmering at that point. I think that was the frustrating part was that it was 37 minutes in. Clare were a point up at the time, and Tip were kind of starting to come back into it. They were starting to take over. They started really, really well for the second half, and they looked kind of good going forward. And it was just set up so perfectly. And I think from a neutral perspective, I think just wanted to see a really good game, 15-on-15. Two teams going at it. And I do think the Tip probably would have pulled away, but still, you would have liked to have seen it with 15-on-15 to see if Clare could have recovered. And I just think they never really they just never kind of got recovered from the decision. And once it happened, it was kind of the writing was on the wall, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well as that, even though I've mentioned how Mark Rodgers looked good coming off the bench, and David McInerney as well came in the 53rd minute for Paddy Fitzpatrick, definitely strengthened that line. Tipperary's bench gave them so much as well. Like, the man that stood out for me that came off the bench was Alan Flynn. He looked excellent when he came in. He seemed to kind of nail down a place for himself in midfield coming towards the end of the league. But then he was dropped out of the team. Noel McGrath was put back in. It was a very familiar look to their 2019 All-Ireland winning team for Tipperary. But when Flynn came on, he really laid down a marker to Liam Sheedy. And for me, he's really pushing for a start, especially if they want to continue with Michael Breen at wing forward. When they come up against the bigger teams, I think particularly, for the Munster final now against Limerick, if they come up, with, I think their best strategy would be to put Breen and McCormack at wing forward and partner Flynn with Noel McGrath in midfield.
Yeah, I think you might see. I think Flynn's a definite for the Munster final. I think against Limerick, a Limerick team that will have Will O'Donoghue in midfield. I think that they'll need to match work rate, and they'll need to get somebody in there to try and kind of seize control in that, because that is trademark for Limerick. That Will O'Donoghue just seems to be taking over games in his own, and then you've the half forwards dropping back into that line. So I don't think Tip can afford to have a midfield with Noel McGrath kind of running it in there. I just don't think that he kind of is at the level at right now to control a midfield like that against that opposition. So I think they're going to have to go with Alan Flynn, and I think you'll see Dan McCormack drop in there with Noel McGrath moving up to the forwards with Michael Breen on the wing as well. So yeah, I think Alan Flynn for his work rate has to go in, and I suppose his defensive output, even though he scored 2 points at the weekend as well. So yeah, I think he's a certainty. I'm a little bit surprised as well that Paddy Cadell didn't play at the weekend. Like, I thought he had a very good league campaign and looked like he nailed down a midfield spot too. So I really thought it was going to be Alan Flynn and Paddy Cadell in midfield this year. But yeah, I'll be interested to see if Paddy Cadell gets any game time in the Munster final coming up.
Yeah, well, I feel like the key thing with Sheedy is that he trusts the old guard a lot more than he trusts the young players in this crop for some reason. That's what he did when he came back in as manager at Tipperary as well. A lot of the old guard came straight back into the team. The likes of James Barry, they all came right back into the team. And yeah, he does tend to trust those that he knows. And, the likes of Paddy Cadell, Alan Flynn, they haven't proven themselves yet to Liam Sheedy in the championship match, whereas he knows the credentials of Paddy Maher, he knows the credentials of Noel McGrath. He knows that Noel McGrath did it for him in 2019. And I feel like, Liam Sheedy kind of wants assurances, and that's why he's not almost willing to take a risk on a youngster who has looked good in the league but hasn't done it yet in a championship match. And maybe that was the idea of throwing Alan Flynn on, with not too long to go, seeing, almost like a trial run for him. And now maybe he'll get his run out against Limerick.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but I think it leaves kind of a few questions against Limerick. I wouldn't be too confident from if I was a Tip fan going into the Limerick game. There wasn't a whole lot in that game to kind of suggest that they've kind of evolved much from how they were playing in previous years. And I think it could go a similar kind of pattern to previous games against Limerick, where I think Limerick just have Tip's number right now, and I think you might see a similar kind of outcome to what it's been in the championship in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, last year Limerick just swatted Tipperary aside like they were nothing. So Tipperary definitely need to make a statement this year. And yeah, to be honest, I still think that Limerick are just that step ahead of them. I agree with yourself. I think Limerick just have their number. I think we're both, in agreement that Limerick are going to be Munster champions for 2021. We said it from the get go, and yeah, I don't know if your mind has changed at all about that since.
No, I don't think so at all. I think like we're going to come to the Cork Limerick game as well, but I think Limerick kind of they looked so in control, and then to beat Cork by that margin without kind of even their big players even firing. So like I think Limerick would be delighted with where they are, and I think I just think that they're gonna. I think that with the size profile they have and the way they're playing, I just think they might bully this Tip team, and I don't think there's enough ball winners in that Tip forward line to trouble Limerick enough. So yeah, like you're just looking at kind of silky kind of hurlers that Tip have up front, especially with the team that Sheedy's picked, and I just don't think there's enough ball winners up there to cause huge problems to Limerick. So yeah, I would have to say Limerick would be heavy favourites going into it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And as for Clare, interesting now because there's a lot of sharks now in that tank in the qualifiers. Clare are in there, Waterford are in there, and Galway are in there, obviously, and Wexford are in there now too. Do you think Clare are going to make it out of there?
Look, yeah, it entirely depends on the draw, I suppose. Like the chances are, like there's a good chance that they draw Galway in the first game, and then look, it's 50-50, are they in, are they out, kind of. So it's look, they're gonna need a bit of luck to get through the qualifiers. They could get like a handier run, or they could end up with a nightmare thing where they're playing quality opposition week in week out just to even get back to an All-Ireland quarter-final stage. So yeah, look, I on paper and with the way they performed so far this year, I still think that Clare are probably the best team in the qualifiers that I've seen so far this year based on form. But yeah, look the way kind of the championship's already going so far that on any given day a team can elevate their level slightly more and then cause an upset as well. So I think it's so hard to call. I'm gonna have to wait until I see kind of the fixtures before kind of any kind of confidence over who I think is going to be able to get worked their way through.
Yeah, and knowing Brian Lohan's look, they'll draw Galway, 100%. They'll get the hardest team possible, and then they'll get Tipperary or something in the quarter final.
Yeah.
They seem to get the worst luck under Lohan, and you can see it slowly driving them crazy. But you know, that's the job of an intercounty boss, unfortunately. And he is putting together a really, really strong team there. The likes of Conlon, Cleary, look settled now in their positions, and yeah, they're moving really nicely. And I backed them in any game apart from the Galway game, 100% to make it out of the qualifiers there. So, guys, that is our review of the Clare versus Tipperary game, a game which is, bound to cause plenty of debate around the country for, weeks to come. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to catch up on the rest of our reviews of the rest of the hurling matches that took place over the weekend.